Hey everyone, been a little bit since I've posted a video. Just gonna do a solo battle. Some Prussians attacking Austrians. Pretty straightforward battle. Prussians smacking off the Austrians, trying to capture the bridge, drive them off the field, capture the flank, capture the army. You know, the usual. Let's get going. Okay, we're at the end of turn one. Basically, the Prussian brigade did a wheel. Basically, they're trying to put themselves in position to line up with the Austrians. And then this brigade here started advancing forward. As far as shooting, all we had was long-range artillery fire. This artillery did counter-battery fire. That artillery fired on that unit there. There's Prussian artillery on the end. They shot at that unit there. The Austrian artillery on the hill shot at that infantry unit there. And there were enough casualties caused in some instances to require a morale check. The artillery battery on the end stand there took 5% casualties, took 3 casualties. It's enough to cause a 5%. So if it gets a bad roll, it could potentially rout. Everybody else, they did not receive 5% casualties, so the worst they could do is fall back disordered. So we'll go ahead and start now. So we'll start with the Austrian artillery battery. Green die is going to be high. So that result is a 54. They get a +2 for the morale grade. That gives them a 56. Then they have a -2 for, a -4 for being, 7/8 casualties. This column here. So that'll put them at a 52. If we look at our chart here, 52, they're good. They man the guns. Now we'll roll for the Austrian infantry regiment, the Harsh regiment. That's the 1st battalion. They got a 41. They don't have any penalties, so it's just a straight roll, 41. According to the chart, if they were charging, they could either initiate a charge or continue a charge, so they're definitely good. Finally, we'll roll for the Prussian regiment. So blue high will be die for the Prussians. It's the 2nd battalion of the von Braunschweig. Blue is high. Ooh, that is not good at all. Double ones. Double ones puts them at a rout. They do have a +1 for morale, so that would put them at a 12 fallback disorganized. Now, it's important to know that even if they had negatives or whatever with them routing, because they only took casualties from long-range artillery fire, the worst they could do is fall back disorganized. So the next movement phase, they will fall back disorganized. All right, one thing that's important to point out is that all movement is simultaneous. And it's also important to understand that any movement required by morale checks, such as a rout or fallback disordered, actually happen during the next turn's movement phase. The only exception to that would be, so basically all morale effects apply to the next turn. The only difference would be during the charge portion of the movement phase. So if you rout because you fail to charge or to stand against a charge or something like that, the rout effects in that case would be take effect immediately. But otherwise, all other morale are at the during the next turn. So fallback diode, they need to check the disorganized movement rate. And basically it's a percentage of, or a ratio of their unformed movement rate. So we need to roll a die to see how far they move. 6. That's a lot. So basically this unit's going to fall back unformed rate plus half. So that's going to be 27 centimeters. So they're going to be like back here. It's going to be even further back than where they started. I'm basically running it that everybody's guiding right. So because these 2 units, because their guide basically fell back, they're going to hold in place until these guys get their stuff back together. So here we are after movement. Here's the position of this battalion after it fell back diode. Grenadiers advanced up. Again, they're kind of on their own separate orders to hit the artillery. And there is that second line in behind here. This unit has not interfered with that. The second lines would be somewhere actually right about here. So the second line might hold up just to give that unit room to catch back up, and then move forward from there. Or maybe at least one of this regiment might continue to come forward. But yeah, Prussian infantry is definitely kind of breaking up a little bit. So yeah, see how this turns out. All right, we're after movement and long-range artillery fire. Austrian artillery shifted to that unit to shoot at now. That did cause enough casualties to require morale check. All of the other same units have to make the same morale checks again. Austrian artillery took 2 more casualties. It's not quite enough casualties to take a -8 to the morale check, but it's still at that -4. And it did lose enough that if it does rout, it routs. So let's see where we go. Artillery first, green high. 22. All right, 22 would be enough for it to stand normally. It has a +2 to morale, so 24, so it could deploy rally. But it goes to -4 due to casualties down to 16, so stand disorganized. So basically, the unit holds disorganized. It could voluntarily fall back DO'd, and I would grant because it got a stand disorganized and it's going to make a voluntary fallback DO, and I would argue that it would have the ability to limber and move. But I don't think it would just take shots. So it's best to hold silent this turn, try to rally up as best as it can, and then see where it goes from there. Okay, rally for the Harsh Regiment, 1st Battalion. 63, that's gonna be fine. All right, 1st Battalion for COD. Blues high, 55, that is going to be okay. Finally, Winterfeld number 1. Blue high, holy cow, are you serious? Oh, that's another fallback DO'd. All right, well, that was a pooper of a turn for the Prussians, especially with regarding to their morale rolls. Let's see so we're basically the next movement turn 3. Let's see how this guy does in his fallback DO'd. 5. I think 5 means a full normal move, so that'll be 18 centimeters. It's still a long ways. Well, now I'm kind of regretting my previous comment about saying, hey, I'm going to have everybody dress right and follow, their, file dresser. But, when the guide guy falls back, it kind of stinks your entire attack plan. So I think probably this turn the brigade commander is going to move up, try to kick these guys to say, hey, you guys need to get your butts going. He fell back this order. This guy, he's going to spend this turn reorganizing, so he's going to stay in place. And these guys will basically hold and wait. Yeah. All right, after movement and shooting, one battery here tried to rally, but again keeps getting pounded by the Prussian artillery there, so they're going to have to take a morale check. They're also at the point where they're at a -14 to their morale due to casualties, and because of the disorder they get a -12, so that's actually quite a bit. I have a pretty strong suspicion they're going to rout. I'd be surprised if they don't. And then these guys took casualties, but only 5 from the one battery that was shooting at them. They took enough casualties to rout, and then Harsh also rolled. So let's roll the artillery first. Again, green high, 36. That's guaranteed to rout. That's going to take him to basically a 6 as it is, but I'll show you on the math. So 36 normally would be up here, but they've got a minus 12 because they're disorganized, so that would take them down to 26 and then 16. They do get a +2 for the morale grade, 1, 2 to 22, that's great. But then they get a minus 14 after that, which takes them down to 12. And then beyond that, that would go to 2. And then beyond that, another -3 or whatever. So they're going to rout. Now, this causes a chain reaction. The route movement won't happen until next turn, but the rules do say when a unit routes, you check for the anything within, in the scale that I'm using, 9 centimeters, anything within 9 centimeters of the routing unit also needs to check, make a morale check. So the adjacent artillery also must roll morale. 44 +2, 46, so they're going to be fine. They shake off the routing unit. Go ahead and roll for harsh real quick. They don't have any casualty penalties, but they don't have any bonuses to morale, so it's just a straight roll. 36, that's going to be enough for them to stay where they're at. They're in good condition. And then finally, number 2 Winterfelt. They get a +1 to the morale. Wow, 12 to 13. Correction, that's gonna be a 21. I misread that. That's 21. 21, 22, they are a stand. So they can't move next turn anyways. Well, taking a look at the situation after movement turn 4, I did change that Grenadier Battalion into line. That other Grenadier Battalion's keeping advancing, just checking on forward, but and then that guy stood, but the Brigadier moving up to get these guys to move forward, he moved forward, and now he's moving over there to say, hey, you guys need to get going too. So yeah, this Prussian assault's looking pretty ugly. Basically wasted an hour just twiddling their thumbs. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, it's because of a couple really crappy rolls. So on the Prussian part, a couple of really lucky rolls on the Austrian part. Okay, movement and firing is done for turn 4. This Austrian battery actually got lucky. Only one of the Prussian batteries was able to fire because the other one was masked by its own troops. So it only had 1 casualty taken, and that's not enough to force a morale check because it needed to lose 2 to receive 5% casualties. But it's the end of the turn morale check, so we'll see if we can get these routed units back into order. It's going to be pretty heavy penalties. They need probably like a 50-something. 43. So at best, they need to get a rally, a score of 24. But because they're disorganized at 43, they automatically go down to 23 because of they're considered disorganized while they are routing. They do get a +2 for the morale, brings them up to the 25. But the current casualties they have is an additional -14. So they will rout again another turn. But this time the route movement is, instead of unformed +1/2, it's the die roll, kind of like the fallback disordered movement. You roll a die to see how far they actually move. Okay, rolling for harsh. Still don't have enough casualties to make a morale or to have penalties, so it's just a straight die roll. 46, that's going to be enough to hold. The one remaining Austrian battery got a great roll of 6, doing 6 casualties on Forcade number 1. 13 comes up to a 14. And I am reading it correctly this time. 13, blue is for the Prussians. So 13, they are stand disorganized, so they will halt disorganized. And finally, number 2, Winterfeld. Wow, 15. Again, they will also halt disorganized. Okay, so the Prussian attack is pretty much fallen apart. So the Prussian commanding general is going to order a halt to the assault. Cancel the planned assault and recall his troops. Of course, it's going to take a little bit of time. So in some cases, you know, we're still going to have units moving forward, but here coming up in the turn or two, it should be pretty close to being over. So we'll go through and do our movement. All right, a couple of interesting things. First of all, the message did reach the brigade commander and that grenadier battalion to say, hey, time to halt and fall back. The message heading this way is still en route, so it probably won't get it until next turn. But Austrian grenadiers appeared in the woods to cover this flank. They had orders to, if anyone approaches the hill to attack the guns, that they advance forward to attack. So they're now doing that. This artillery battery doing counter battery fire actually hit a gun. So that battery is down 1 gun. So it's only going to do half damage from now on. There's no rules per se that doing an artillery gun damage causes a morale check, but I think it's big enough that it would warrant a morale check. So here's a morale check for that artillery. 63 plus 265, it's fine. It's still going to man its remaining gun. The only other morale checks that we have, this took casualties, but not enough to put it over. Actually, correction, it did. It took 6. I looked it up, yes it did, and because that unit was halted disorganized and rallying this turn, it essentially takes the disorganized penalty factor to the morale check, so it's going to be a -12 to whatever this is. That's a 52. They go down to a 32 plus 1, 33. 33, they get above a rally, so they finish their rally turn out just fine. Now over here, this grenadier battalion had formed into a line and then moved up. Well, the battery is trained on the grenadier battalion and hit them with 10. But because first Winterfeld moved up, it's within range to receive the full brunt of the pass-through fire. So I ended up taking 10, so that also took 10, which in turn means both these units need to make morale checks. Starting with the grenadier unit. 24, they've got a +2 to their morale, that'd be a 26. That'd be a deploy rally, so they'd be fine to continue with their progress. And then Winterfeld, 45 going up to 46, they're fine as well. So that ends that turn. Going on to the next turn. So the grenadiers are going to stop. And kind of making a traffic jam here. It's going to be kind of interesting. The brigade commander is going to be sending out messages. So these units all here basically get the order to stop and withdraw. Message needs to go out to him. Message needs to go out to him. And that'll take another turn of basically movement on those guys to get going. And this guy hasn't received the message yet, so he knows that there's grenadiers on this flank, so he will probably react to face that threat. End of movement and shooting of turn 6. Austrian grenadiers formed up so that way they can begin their advance on the Prussian grenadiers to kick them out. Prussian grenadiers turned. These guys, having only received the orders this turn to stop advancing, still advanced because the orders don't actually get read till the end of the turn. So basically now, next turn, they will start falling back. Everybody else has received the orders to fall back, and they will do so. These artillery batteries, recognizing the presence of Austrian troops, turn the guns to be able to protect the grenadiers with artillery fire, which didn't leave a lot of artillery shooting. We still had the 2 Austrian guns shooting down here because these guys basically didn't move. There's that confusion of the change of orders. They did end up getting 6 casualties, and also at the pass-through on Winterfeld. They're the only ones that need to do a morale check. This battery did only fire and hit with 1, again because it's half battery. And then that battery fired back, just doing a handful of damage, not enough to cause a morale check. So here's the Grenadiers. 16 plus 2 gives them to 22. They would stand. So they're going to hold their position this next turn. Now they do have the ability to voluntarily fall back disordered. So we'll see what happens with Winterfeld. That's maybe what they'll do. Winterfeld gets a 24 plus 1's 25. They can move normally. So that's probably what's going to happen. Now, as far as the message of this turn, normal movement that would have happened. Now, when I rolled the die, I should roll the die last turn, so I knew this was going to happen last turn. The die result indicated that the courier getting the message out here got captured. And I'm going to say that is a plausible thing to have happened because he kind of had to come out here in no man's land. And there's kind of this confusing mist, especially coming in front of the smoke from the cannons here, stuff like that. There's this confusing area, and he mistook one of the Austrian grenadier battalions for the grenadier battalion he was supposed to go to, kind of in the smoke and the mire and the muck. So he ended up getting captured. So actually this Austrian, Prussian grenadier battalion hasn't received the orders to withdraw. I think it'll become evident that everybody else is withdrawing, so they'll eventually do that voluntarily. But now their attention is focused on the fact that they're being threatened by 2 Austrian grenadier units. So I think that's actually going to be their focus, as opposed to actually looking around them, just seeing that the rest of the army's kind of gone away. So we'll see what happens next. All right, end of the turn. Nobody had to make with morale checks. These guys did take some casualties, but it wasn't enough to cause a morale check. These guys shot at them, but not enough to cause a morale check. Now, I had forgotten about the orders to withdraw for them, so I rolled a die to see if they would have, what the situation was. They got the orders that I rolled. That was a turn delayed, so. And like I said, that basically this next turn they're going to limber up and go because this guy is not in charge of them. The guy off board's in charge of them. So basically the lieutenant general doesn't know that their grenadiers are kind of stuck out in limbo. So basically, Prussian army is going to withdraw. Austrian grenadiers are going to push these guys off. Austrian artillery is going to keep plinking at them as they move off the board. Yeah, it's just an easy way for me to clean up because I got to pick stuff up anyways. I might as well move them when I move them off the board straight into their trays. Makes cleanup fun, I guess, for lack of a better term. All right, we're done with movement. We do have some small arms fire, probably the first of the game and maybe some of the only of the game. So the Austrian grenadiers moved up full, so they can't shoot. Prussian grenadiers, though, can shoot. So they get +3 to fire, and then they're not being fired at, so they get a +2 to their die roll. They're medium range, even though I know some people might take umbrage at the fact that they're not waiting until they're closer. But, I think they would have recognized that the rest of the army is falling back, so they're going to take the shot. So 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 2 more for not being fired at is 8. Highest they can go through is 7, which is K. They're firing with a full 600, which is 39, doubled, for first fire, 78. They do 78, cause 78 casualties on the Austrian Grenadiers. All right, end of the shooting, going for morale. These artilleries plinked at this guy, causing 9 damage, causing a morale check. So 44, he's fine. He'll be able to operate normally. Now the Austrian Grenadiers have to take a morale check. They've got a -4 for the casualties and then a +1 for the morale grade. So basically a -3. 31. 31 -3 goes to 24. Deploy rally. Basically, they can't advance. They needed to get at least a 32 to advance. So they can still shoot. They're not disorganized, but they'll just have to stand there and they'll fire next turn. I think the Prussian Grenadiers are gonna get up to try to get up in their face, get up in their grill. They'll try to make a morale check to at least get an advance. That way they can move into point blank range and really put the hurt on them. But yep, everybody else is withdrawing. They're kind of the forlorn hope, I guess, kind of covering the Prussian withdrawal. I think it would be, you know, if this game was going to last longer, it would be prudent to say, hey, the Austrians captured the message that the Prussians are withdrawing, so the Austrians would then issue a command order for everybody to advance, but I'm not going to do that because it's late. I need to pick it up after this battle's over. So basically, I'm just moving these guys off to get them off the board, and then we'll see how that fight ends up. Oh well, talk to you later. See you in a bit. All right, the Prussian Grenadier needs to get at least an advance to move into point blank range, otherwise they'll stop it close. 62, that will do it. Point blank range. All right, did the roll for the artillery. These guys kind of hanging out to cover the flank here. Across the way there, 3 shooting at first fracade. I'll calculate that here in a second, but right now I'm gonna do the Grenadier fight, slap fight. Blue's Prussia, green's Austria. Prussia gets a +3, Austria gets a +1. So 5 on the Prussians, and Austria gets a 6. All right. I'll come back with calculations. All right, quick rundown. That guy took 9 casualties. He only ended up doing 1 against the column because he's a half battery, but because he's in column, it tripled it, so he did 3 casualties. So he's gonna need to do a morale check. He does not. And then the Prussian Grenadiers did 84 casualties on the Austrian Grenadiers, and the reverse, because the Austrians still had a first fire at point blank, did 134 against the Prussians. So they're both definitely going to need to take morale checks, which we'll do right now. All right, first thing first, Winterfeld's easy. We'll do that real quick. 14. That's great. I think that's a stand disorganized, so he'll voluntarily fall back DO next turn. Then we'll do the Austrian Grenadiers. Their current numbers are sitting at 338, starting at 500. So they'll be at a -8, +1, -7 total to the die roll. 65, they are going to be just fine, even with all the casualties that they just took. The 7 puts them all the way 55, 50, puts them at 54, so they're fine. All right, next comes the Prussians. They're at 466 of 600, so they're only getting a -4 to their die roll due to casualty penalties. They do have a +2 to their morale, but they've also got an enemy on the flank, so that's going to be an additional -12 to the die roll. So let's see what happens. 46. minus 4 is 42. 46. 42, that's for the casualties. Plus 2 for the morale rate is 44. And then it's minus 12 for on the flank. 34, 24. Deploy or rally. So they stay there, but they can't advance or anything. This is going to be really interesting because the those guys are coming in on the flank. So yeah. All right, the Austrian grenadiers to the front of the Prussians are gunfighting. Austrians on the flank, on the other hand, can freely charge, so they don't even need to check the charge. They're going in on the flank; they can just go. So the Prussians need to make a morale check. Yeah, they rolled a 16. I'm not even gonna bother looking that up. They're gonna rout immediately. So I think with that unit routing, and it's pretty clear that the Prussians are withdrawing, the Austrian guns fall silent, letting the barrels cool, and a cheer erupts from the Austrian lines as the Prussians withdraw to figure out what exactly happened and what went wrong. The Prussians got beat so badly they don't even get the honor of being put back into the drawer properly or in an organized fashion. They just get stuck into the drawer in the manner in which they came off the field. Well, maybe that'll teach them to do a little better job in the future. All right, that's it. Battle's done. Prussians lose, Austrians win. In the end, the Prussians took 240 casualties. Austrians took 219, with one 12-pound gun being destroyed. But the Prussians were able to withdraw their artillery in good order, so there's always that at least. Oh well. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at this in the future and see. I mean, I think a lot of it was just those really stupid, unlucky die rolls. I know, having played not this scale, but with the other game over the author's house, you know, we've had issues with, not issues, you know, we'd have attacks that would kind of break up and not be efficient, but we'd at least get some infantry on infantry fighting, you know, at least get that far. I mean, I could have pushed it, but I mean, it would have been so disjointed and broken, it wouldn't have been worth it. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it was not going very well, so. Kind of looking at the numbers, I do think giving the Austrians a +1 to their fire was a mistake for their artillery anyways. I don't think it really changed anything in the long run, but there might have been one of those crappy die rolls from a morale check from artillery fire that maybe would not have happened if the Austrians didn't have that +1 to shooting. But I mean, even that said, I mean, the Prussian morale rolls were horrible throughout the whole thing, so ultimately I don't think it would have mattered. It maybe just delayed that unit one turn from getting a you know, withdrawal check or a morale check. So, oh well, I think it might be worth playing this again, especially not having the extra +1 bonus to artillery fire. I think it would be worth having somebody else over here to help me play it, so I can have a different perspective on how to run the scenario or the battle. But anyways, I think once this is all posted and edited and put together, there's going to be a couple guys who I regularly game with too that they'll be able to see this and take a look at things and tell me You know, is there an actual problem with the artillery fire, or is it just the Prussians just really had that unlucky of morale rolls? So, anyways, I'll talk to you later. Bye.